Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of the Scrubbed In podcast. I hope you've all been keeping well. This week we have with us the amazing Alex Alamri, who is a neurosurgical trainee in London and the co-founder of BrainBook. He probably doesn't need much of an introduction. He is super renowned and super famous. His YouTube channel has recently hit 100,000 subs. A massive pleasure to have you on the show today, Alex.
Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, guys. It's a pleasure. Been watching you guys for the past few months.
Amazing.
you are smashing it. Just being a neurosurgical trainee, that in itself, we want to talk about that a bit in depth. But as is the tradition at Scrubbed In, we want to take it all the way to the very beginning. A young Alex, tell us when you decided you wanted to be a doctor and were you always kind of going to become a brain surgeon?
To be honest, it all started... I make no... I'm not... there's no secret to it. I do tell people that I never originally wanted to be a doctor. It's something that just kind of happened to me. And I'm always a bit hesitant to say things like that because I know, it's hard grind getting into medical school, even just trying to smash your GCSEs and A-levels and just trying to do your best to, try and get into med school. I worked damn hard to get into med school, but it's not what I wanted for me. I think growing up, my real passions were for, art and English, to be absolutely honest with you. I grew up wanting to be an artist or wanted to do something like English literature in Cambridge. That was my dream. I wanted to do English lit in Oxbridge or something like that. Or, history of art or something like that. I just really enjoyed drawing, and I was a bit of a recluse kid, only child. So I spent a lot of time playing video games. I don't know if any of your podcast subscribers are gamers, but I was a massive Counter-Strike fan when I was a really fat teenager. I'd spend a whole weekend playing Counter-Strike, and then obviously later on it turned into Call of Duty and all of that. I to be honest, I coasted through a lot of my teenage years, not really wanting to do medicine and just hoping that I could just keep doing what I was doing, enjoy art classes, enjoy doing English lit, and then hopefully get a degree. And then at some point, do make something of myself. And then what happened was, my parents, I've got Asian parents. You boys have got Asian parents as well. You probably know the drill.
We know where it's going.
We know where it's going.
But you get the usual kind of art's not a career. What are you going to do after you get an English degree? What are you going to do with your life? How are you going to raise a family on an artist's salary? Well, an artist doesn't really have a salary. Well, back in the day they didn't anyway. So I kind of just got pushed towards medicine. It was either that or law, and I got zero interest in law, absolutely zero. So yeah, that's what happened. I did my A-levels. I did some weird A-levels. I did English lit because I said, if you're going to make me do chemistry and biology, then I'm going to have to do something I like, right?
For your sanity, right?
Nearly flunked chemistry, nearly failed my A-levels because of chemistry, actually. But it was a prerequisite for medicine. And I did Latin as well at A2, which was a bit of a random one. But that was good. I found that really interesting. Definitely. And then, got into med school at St. George's. And, I was just kind of coasting through med school, not really having an eye on what kind of doctor I wanted to be. Took neuroanatomy, obviously. We all do neuroscience in second year at St. George's. And I thought neuroanatomy was quite cool. Neuroscience was quite cool. I loved the fact that there was a lot of unexplained stuff in the modules. It was a bit like, we think this is how it works. This is generally what we think the loops do. This is what we think this part of the cortex does. But it was a bit unsatisfactory. It was a bit like, just holding a black box in front of you and being like, this part does this. We think it does this. And that's it. Just take it for granted that that's what everybody says. Learn it. Try and figure out what these hideous loops and pathways do. And it's really hard and people find it really difficult, and just crack on. but I started drawing neuroanatomy stuff just, through boredom and through just, you just doodling stuff. And I found, I could doodle pathways. And then people started coming to me and saying, "Oh, I've heard, you like neuroanatomy. Can you explain this?" And it's like, went down that way. But then that kind of died at the end of the module. And I was like, okay, that was cool, but whatever. And then third year, so clinicals, started off with medicine, started off doing diabetes and endocrinology. It was awful. It was absolutely awful. I mean, I say this now, I'm a pituitary registrar at the National. So it's my bread and butter right now, but I understand it now. It's completely different, or I think I understand it. But back then, I just thought medicine is really not for me. This is horrendous. What am I going to do with the rest of my life? I just can't stand it. And then luckily, it's funny. I met my wife when I was on my first day of medical school, and we ended up doing orthopedics together at Swelliok in Surrey, which is a elective orthopedic centre. And it was brilliant. Like, we both really enjoyed it. Orthopods are really charismatic, funny. It's kind of, they give you like a lump of cement that's discarded from a hip arthroplasty. And, they're like, "Oh, make something interesting out of it, not a cock and balls, blah, blah, blah." And you're like, okay. They're funny and they make it engaging. And then you're in a theatre environment for the first time and you think, wow, this is quite cool. I think what I really enjoyed about surgery was that I think when you do medicine as a med student and you're shadowing house officers, SHOs, registrars, you're on the wards a lot, and you watch registrars and other junior doctors just being constantly bombarded with information that's not necessarily helpful. And they constantly seem to be torn between, going and seeing this patient, taking a referral, going to clinic, this sick patient, arrests, and that's all cool. And, if you really dig medicine, that's awesome. But I just found, it just didn't grab me. But I found that when I was in theatre, it's this kind of controlled cocoon where, a patient comes in, they're asleep. You've got a surgical team that's very multidisciplinary, well, not multidisciplinary, but has lots of different team members, and it needs to be a really well-oiled machine. And you see experiences of poorly oiled machines sometimes, and that can be interpersonal conflicts or, processes that don't work properly. But when you see surgery work properly and you see surgeons at work, I personally thought that was incredible. And then the first few times you scrub in, start assisting, cutting a few stitches, really basic stuff. And you just think, I'm really involved in something. And you see the patients afterwards and, they're either, hopefully they're better. They're always thankful. And you feel like you've made a real concrete difference. So I thought, okay, I want to be a surgeon. So that was it. That was my first light bulb moment. And then, kind of coasted through surgical firms. I was like, orthopedics is fun, it's cool, but I don't want to be fixing hips and knees. And then you see some other cool stuff. Everything is really interesting to you at medical school to begin with, and then it just you just kind of think, oh, actually, maybe not. This isn't for me. And then neurosurgery is not really part of a med school curriculum. You don't really get to go and experience it, right? Which I find really weird, because it's very interesting surgery at the very least. So I did a taster week at George's. I think I was supposed to be shadowing Henry Marsh for a week, but ended up just spending. As is the way with these things, it's a name that you kind of get attached to sort out the placement. But in actual fact, you end up spending like a day with them, a few days with some registrars, SHOs, house officers, that kind of thing. Yeah. And it was really eye-opening. I mean, I went to different theatres, different days, saw loads of weird pathologies. I think I saw one of the consultants drain a brain abscess with a needle and a syringe, just freehand. And so much pus came out, and I just thought, oh, this is insane. This is crazy. That's someone's brain that's happening to. I saw an aneurysm being clipped. That was one of the gnarliest first neurosurgical operations I watched. That was quite crazy. Just saw loads of different stuff. Saw loads of neurosurgical patients on the wards. So the pathology was cool. The surgery was obviously very cool. It's like it's neurosurgery. Oh, very complicated. It's very black box. No one sees inside the specialty. That kind of thing. But then, I've the registrars you find and the SHOs a lot of the time were very. They kind of lived and breathed it. It was very much. It's not just a case of always being there. Yes, there's loads of doctors that are always at work. There are loads of doctors and nurses and all kinds of multidisciplinary team members that work really hard and put their all into it. But there was this when you meet a neurosurgery trainee, especially back then, there was this real hunger. There was this real fire to learn more, do more, practice more, just be involved. And, their level of knowledge was astounding. And back then as well, their level of knowledge of general medicine and managing patients on the wards was very different. They managed a lot of quite complex medical stuff on the wards with a bit of medical input now and again. But I really liked that. It seemed like a really holistic, comprehensive specialty. And it tied in well with neurology, and I just found it fascinating. That's when I decided I wanted to do neurosurgery.
Did you get to taste other surgical fields before completely deciding?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, you say you decide to do something, right? It's like you get this passion to, that's what I really want to do. You get this fire in you to kind of pursue it. But, you've still got to complete medical school. You've still got to go do other firms and attachments. In final year, I did an assistant house officer job in Frimley Park in general surgery. That was actually really awesome. It's a military hospital, so you've got military trainees there. They've got a very different attitude to other. They're very can do, will do it now. Really get you involved. As a med student, I'll say assisting chest drain insertions on the ward. All that kind of stuff. It was good. And again, at the time, you're like, oh, actually, this wouldn't be so bad if I had to do it. But then you keep going back and thinking, no, actually, I still think that's what I want to do. So, it does wax and wane, of course, but you tend to have this underlying urge and fire to do that thing that you think you want to do.
No, definitely. Tell us about foundation training, and did you kind of go straight into neurosurgical training straight off the bat, or did you take a few years out to kind of dib and dab in a few things?
Yeah, so foundation training is a bit of a funny one. I mean, that was one of my first major stresses as a newly qualified doctor, and just generally as a human being with a salary and being out in the world on their own and not living with mum anymore. So I chose Cambridge for my foundation program because there were a lot of neurosurgical jobs within the foundation program there. There were 12 slots, and I placed 13th in the foundation program rankings, which was super annoying. So I had to go to Cambridge, but I didn't have a neurosurgical job, so that was a bit painful to begin with. But actually, I did the majority of my training in a DGH, which I can say is above and beyond the best way to do training when you're very junior. Absolutely incredible experience. I worked at a hospital called Hinchingbrook that honestly was really, really fantastic training, absolutely amazing staff, great consultants. You had this central little mess where all the doctors and surgeons from different teams would go and chill and hang out in the middle of the day. It was just like awesome.
Vibe compared to like the big teaching hospitals, which
it's
perfect for NF1. You're fresh out of med school.
Yeah,
it still feels like home compared to like a massive teaching hospital.
It does. Absolutely. No, I completely agree. It did feel like a home away from home, especially because I'd moved away from home, So I did my general medical jobs. I had a general surgery job. Because it was a DGH and I was a house officer that was interested in surgery, I actually went to theatre loads and got to do loads of stuff in theatre. And it was affirming because you're being taught general surgical skills, which is really, really important, really important. You pick up how the theatre works, how to tee up patients for theatre, how to just generally handle instruments and talk to people in a theatre capacity. It's all really important theatre etiquette that you don't want to be learning when you're just thrown into specialty training. So yeah, I did loads there, and then I did vascular surgery at Addenbrooke's, which was actually really fun. Massive teaching hospital. It was proper balls to the wall surgery a lot of the time. I think I had an experience there where it really cemented for me that I definitely wanted to be a surgeon rather than anything else. And that was when, there was a patient with a ruptured AAA that came in, and I think the reg ran down to assist the consultant in theatre. Oh, sorry. So the reg ran down to assist the consultant in theatre, and I tagged along just to see, because I'd never seen a ruptured AAA surgery before and so on. And it was an open repair, obviously. I walked into theatre, and there were 2 consultant surgeons, vascular surgeons, who were operating, and there were 2 anaesthetists there because the patient's blood pressure was unreadable. They were just pouring blood products in, trying to maintain a blood pressure. Really, really high stress scenario. Really, you could feel it in the air. I mean, everything was just dead quiet, And I just walked over. I wasn't scrubbed, but I just peered in to see what they were doing. And these 2 consultants, very experienced, were operating together in tandem, and they weren't even communicating. It was all non-verbal communication. They knew the steps so perfectly. They knew what they needed to do, and it just worked. And it was so fluid. Incredible. And the anaesthetists were working with the surgeons, very clear communication. Everything was just beautiful. And it was just one of those, hair on the back of your neck moments where you just think, this is what I want to do, and I want to be like that when I grow up. So actually, vascular surgery.
Describing it makes me feel like just hearing that. Just
you can envision that moment.
Genuinely, it just felt like it. You could cut the air, and you could cut it with a knife. There was so much tension in the air, but it didn't feel stressful because they just had this aura of calm and control about them. And it's rare. It's rare for doctors to have that. We all try and achieve that. Some of us will do better than others, but if you can achieve something like that in your career, then I think that's something commendable. So yeah, I mean, vascular surgery for a long time was up there in my things to do if I couldn't achieve my plan A, right? So yeah, then I applied for neurosurgery and I didn't get in. So
oh, seriously? I don't know that.
No. So I didn't even shortlist for an interview.
Did you apply to come back to London, or did you want to stay in
Cambridge? So it was national selection, so you don't really initially get that choice. You just apply to the pool. You're shortlisted based on this kind of, not tick box to an extent, white box spaces. You fill out all sorts of stuff, and I think I had a decent CV to get shortlisted, but I didn't for various reasons. So I took some time out of training, and I moved back down to London after foundation, and I took up a role as an anatomy demonstrator at King's, which was cool.
Amazing.
That was cool. Again, it's stressful because a lot of people, they say, oh yeah, teaching's chilled out, it's good vibes. But you know what? I mean, if you're teaching most of the day, every day, to different groups and different students and different areas of anatomy that you reasonably, but in order to teach this stuff that's complex, you need to really know it inside out. And a lot of students obviously know their stuff too, right? You don't want to be caught out not knowing the basics. So
medics
it's not
flag you down, mate.
Medical students flag it straight away.
It's really not a good look. It's not a good look at all.
Send the papers, mate. It's wrong. Take it down. But
yeah, absolutely. So there's a lot of preparation that goes into it. It's hard. You're talking, quizzing, interacting, different groups every 45 minutes to an hour. You're with cadavers. It smells of embalming fluid. You're shattered by the end of the day, and it's just constant. But I learned a lot. I bolstered my CV, and then what did I do? I think I either went into core surgical training or I went to King's. I keep getting them mixed up, but at some point I applied to do neurosurgery training again, and I didn't get shortlisted again, which was
twice now.
Yeah, I mean, by that point,
how are you feeling at the time?
Pretty awful. It wasn't just coming from a background where failure wasn't an option, right? You know, if you go into medical school, especially more back in the day, now I think the general feeling is that people are a lot more chilled out about a lot of, you know, I'm not going to say back in the day, but in previous time, you know, culture is changing every day, right? And failure was not an option. And I'd failed twice in a row to even get shortlisted for an interview, which for one makes you think, is this the right thing for me? Second, it makes you feel like, you know, your self-esteem is in your boots. It's very difficult to pick yourself up when you're not only trying to figure out why you're messing up so badly, but also trying to secure yourself a job for the next year to pay you a salary that will also boost your CV. You know, there's just a lot to think about. I was newly married as well, you know. So there's just a lot of pressure. And I felt bad because, you know, my wife was a GP registrar at the time. I was kind of locuming and trying to figure out what I was doing next with my life. Am I going to get a national selection number? If I do get that number, is it going to be in London or is it going to be in some other part of the country? It's just there are so many things to think about.
Absolutely.
So, I did. So the story with the shortlisting thing is that, and this is really important for any of your med student listeners and subscribers, is that if you can have all the CV points in the world, but if you don't answer the questions on the application form and you don't write them properly, you're not going to get any points. So I was really fortunate to work with an anatomy demonstrator called Joseph. Yeah, Joseph, who this guy was basically so intelligent. I mean, he was mad. He was so funny. The guy was so clever that he decided to apply to cardiothoracics training and neurosurgery training. He kind of wanted to do cardiothoracics, but he wanted to apply for neurosurgery training just for fun to see if he could get it.
Oh my God.
And he did. And he got a cardiothoracics number and he came first in the country, right? So I thought, okay, let me go to this guy and get him to read over my application form and see what I've done so wrong. And he read through it and he was like, man, what is this rubbish? Like, who wrote this for you? And, he just said, okay, just change this bit here, answer the damn question there, pop that bit in here. You haven't even answered this question there. And I was like, yeah, good point. Did it, reapplied, and my shortlisting score went through the roof. It was mad. And then obviously I got an interview and then I got my number. Getting the interview was stressful because, again, I don't know how much detail to go into, whether you have many subscribers that want to know about the nuances of neurosurgical application processes. But I mean, obviously this year it was all very Zoomified, but in normal times, it's quite an involved interview process where everyone goes to Sheffield. It's in the football club in some offices there, and there's loads of trainees there, and the day starts kind of like you've got a load of applicants who are sitting there that have all been shortlisted for brain surgery and spine surgery, right? So they're all keen beans. They all want it, and they're all reasonably intelligent human beings, right? So then you're all sitting there and it's very cliquey. Some people know each other, some people won't. And that's when all the kind of shit talking starts. Sorry, pardon my French. But that's the only way I can really describe it.
We want the raw event.
How does it feel to be there? Is it like
it's just
what's it
it's
like?
just horrible because I'm not like I'm quite I don't know. People think that because I do social media and stuff, I'm really outspoken and loud and brash, but I'm quite a private person. And I really don't like it when people try and talk you down and try and knock you down because, when I was a kid, I was really fat and used to get bullied and stuff. And it's all just part and parcel of growing up. But it really triggers me, when people try and just put you down. And there was quite a bit of that going on. So, I just sat in a corner.
Amongst trainees?
Well, they weren't trainees yet, right? They weren't trainees yet. They're all applicants. But, there was a bit of that. It's all very subtle. It's all very, I think the current term is microaggressions, all that kind of jazz. So, I just kind of went and sat in a corner on my own and just tried to ignore everybody. And then the rest of the day is kind of, there are lots of stations. There are practical skills stations. There's things like suturing, setting up a neuronavigation system and using that, which is called a stealth station that we use, or a brain lab, or whatever people call it, or whatever they like to call it. So that's interesting. And then there's another one where there's a microscope in a room with a plate of ball bearings of different colors and a load of different surgical instruments. And you've got a certain time limit to create a pattern in another plate using whatever instruments you want. But, it's all about kind of going in. And a lot of times people won't have used an operating microscope before. Even if you've done a neurosurgical job as an SHO, you're not going to use the microscope that much, if at all.
Yeah. So
you kind of go in and you think, oh shit. There's a microscope and there's a consultant, and what do I do? So you just kind of have to go in and just figure it out, right? And then the other stations are about a quarter of an hour long each, so, portfolio, clinical management, that kind of stuff. And there was a Breaking Bad news station to a layperson that was in there and things like that. So it's all very high stress. It's a bit like your final year OSCE basically again, but your future career there as well. So, but I was doing core surgery at the time, and I found out I was doing an elective list on Sunday with my old boss, and I just got this email through. I think it was on Oriel telling me where I was going to be working and stuff, and I got my job. And honestly, I couldn't think straight. The theatre team were like, your patient's ready on table, Mr. Bellows in there waiting for you. And I was like, I just need to call my wife. Can I just call my wife? And they're like, I called my wife, and she was like, usually when I call my wife, her first response is, shit, what's wrong? So I told her I got a training number, and I think, we basically both started crying. It was one of the best days of my life.
That is amazing.
It just felt like a load of, it wasn't, you've got the happiness of getting the job, but the past few years had been so full of pressure, going through different jobs, boosting your CV, locuming to make money, not knowing where you're going to be living, all that kind of stuff. You don't realize just how much stress you're feeling until that stress is lifted. And it literally felt like someone had lifted a 100 kg suitcase off my head. It was a physical feeling of stress relief, genuinely. And my wife felt it too.
If you were speaking to now someone in a similar position now, because I've actually met a few trainees who didn't get training numbers. On Twitter, I've seen loads of tweets where people have said, damn, I missed out. What would you say to those people who've gone through such a difficult moment? They don't know where their career is going. It's all uncertain. Maybe they've had 2 shots at a particular training pathway and not gotten it. What would you say to them now as an ST6 neurosurgeon?
It's a difficult one, isn't it? Because a lot of these things are individual and unique, but there are certain things that I learned from the process. First and foremost is make sure that it is genuinely the job that you want to do. So obviously when I wanted to apply for an F2, I didn't have experience of the job. I'd had taster weeks and I'd met I tried to immerse myself as much as possible. When I failed the first time and I got my junior clinical fellow job at King's, I mean, you want to choose a job like that. Lots of good units in London where you get not thrown in the deep end, but they're hard, fast jobs that take you to the next level.
Yeah.
So they're good from just a general medical or surgical job perspective, in that they teach you how to be good, right? But also it gives you the opportunity to go to theatre. Not that theatre is the be all and end all. Yes, we want to be surgeons, but you need to realize that there's a load of other stuff that goes with it. If you don't like the looks of clinics, if you don't like spine clinics, if you don't want to be doing loads of ward rounds, if you don't want to be called at random times of the evening by other junior colleagues about your patients that you've operated on, it's not the specialty for you, but you're not going to be able to figure that out until you do it, even if it's just for 6 months. Yeah. So just do an SHO job in neurosurgery and figure out if it's definitely what you want. And do a spine clinic. If you can do a spine clinic, you can do it. If you can, so that's a good test. And then the other thing is, if you don't know why you're not getting in, and if you don't have a secondary perspective, you need to get someone to either eyeball your application, eyeball your CV, and help you figure out what it is you're doing wrong. Because like in my situation, it could just be something very simple, like not answering the damn question, which every lecturer, anyone in medical school will tell you the reason why you're not doing well is because you're not answering the damn question. So those are two really easy, simple things that you can, it's not simple, but that you can do, right? The other thing is, failing is not easy, especially for, people that are in high profile jobs, or that are used to passing and progressing with their careers and things. It hits your self-esteem and it knocks your confidence. And I know that my self-confidence was in absolute tatters before I went to my interview. It was so bad that at one point, I developed a kind of mild stutter when people would ask me questions on ward rounds or in morning meetings and things. And actually, I was really fortunate that there was a senior clinical fellow at the time that noticed this and said, I'll coach you, I'll help you go through things. And he did so much with me. Genuinely, if it wasn't for him, I don't think I would have passed that interview. But he built me from the ground back up again. My knowledge was there, the experience was there, but I had no self-confidence. So again, even if you do get an interview in whatever specialty you want to do, a really important part of it is having confidence. Now, you need to straddle the line between arrogance and confidence, right? You don't go into these kinds of things arrogant, because you'll fail. Nobody likes it, and nobody wants an arrogant doctor or surgeon working for them or with them. But if you go into something like I did, thinking, I've got nothing to lose, I know what I'm doing, and I'm good enough for this job, then that mindset and the focus that gives you is far more important than anything else. Okay, this is on the proviso that you have the knowledge and the experience, right? But if you have those things and you add that on top of it, you'll be on fire. Without that confidence and without that boosted self-esteem, I've seen so many people in similar positions to me failing the interviews, and you just think, how? You're damn good. Like I've seen you on the wards, I've seen you with patients, I've seen you in theatre. You should be a trainee, but they just keep failing the interview, and it's because their confidence is low. Yeah. So I think those are my three things.
Kind of going back, you find out you've finally managed to get a training post. You feel this weight has been lifted off your shoulder. Tell us how it was to finally become a neurosurgical trainee. Was it what you expected? Was it kind of, this isn't what I sought it out to be? Tell us about that kind of part of your journey.
When you become a trainee, there's obviously a sense of pride, and you throw yourself into work and you want to do well. The thing is, like in neurosurgery, you move around a lot of different units, you meet a lot of different people, you work for a lot of different people. So your circumstances and your experiences of things are going to be very different wherever you go. So it's difficult to say, is it what you expected? I mean, yes, the brain and spine surgery part of it is what I expected. Dealing with improving your surgical skills and your confidence as a surgeon is a whole separate topic, right? But I think I think training now is very different to what training used to be for various reasons. I'm not going to belabor or go into, but it's a different beast, right? You have to try and get more training from fewer opportunities, mainly because of things like COVID. I mean, you have that's a year and a half of our time as surgical trainees with very limited surgical exposure. I mean, it's ramping back up now, but you know, it's created a lot of stress amongst trainees. But yeah, it's a very different beast. You realize when you see your consultants and how much admin work they have to do, how much bureaucracy there is, just generally how much work they do behind the scenes to get patients to theatre. It makes, you know, it's one of those things that you don't really realize until you're a trainee, until you become a registrar, really. That actually it, you know, it's not all guts and glory, and it's not all being in theatre. There's a lot of other stuff. And this goes back to my point about doing a neurosurgical job as an SHO. But even as an SHO, a lot of the time you won't see all of that. You know, I think I always used to think, oh, what, the registrars are never here, they're always operating. But actually, if you look closely, they're always doing a lot of other stuff to make sure that their patients get to theatre. So you can't, I think all surgical training is like that now. And you can't go into it with rose-tinted glasses. So you just have to make the most of the opportunities that you have. But yeah, neurosurgery training is awesome. You see awesome stuff. You meet cool patients that go through the most incredible things, and you just think, wow, I don't know whether I could do that. And you know, a lot of them are heroes. You know, you meet a patient that's going to go for awake brain surgery, and you know, you're assisting a consultant who's doing an awake brain surgery. You just find yourself like looking at this patient thinking, I don't know how you have the balls or whatever, you know, to do this. It's just insane, but they do, and so they get good outcomes. So
sounds absolutely amazing. So now you're a sort of neurosurgical training. You're going through the ranks. You're loving everything about it. Tell us a little bit about BrainBook. Tell us a little bit about how it's come about, YouTube, all of that jazz. How do you even fit that in alongside training?
So BrainBook's a kind of science communication and public engagement charity now. It's weird to say that out loud. It started off a few years ago as a kind of just a social media project where BrainBook was initially the idea of a med student called Priya Rogers at King's. And she wanted to do Twitter case-based discussions. And that's all it was. And for various reasons, it stop-started, and we fell out of touch, but kept BrainBook going. And it turned from Twitter CBDs. What I realized, because I was doing a lot of this stuff on my own in my spare time, it was a lot of, you know, creating little operative videos on the tube in the morning when on my way to work and that kind of thing. I found that a lot of the people that were interacting were patients, not med students and not medical professionals. And they were like, oh, it's really interesting to see, like, I had this removed from my head, but I don't know what it looks like. And now I know, and now I know what it is and why you guys do what you do. So I thought, okay. So then started making the YouTube videos, and as you guys know, trying to build an audience is really difficult on social media. And you put a huge amount of time and effort into something for what looks like few views, very little engagement, and so on. But it started to pick up. Had lots of med students, patients, medical professionals commenting, you know, saying, keep doing what you're doing, blah, blah, which is really encouraging. So started upping the ante, doing more vlogs and more operative videos. And the whole key was to try and narrate the videos, not using jargon, so that you're communicating something to a very general audience, which is really tough, right? So then it just really blew up. We've got a bit of a presence on social media. We've got links with WFNS Young Neurosurgeons. We've done all sorts of work with lots of people, really, and then turned it into a charity. And here we go.
Amazing. Do you think that's tapped back into, you said at the beginning of this podcast about the desire to do art, your creative side. Do you think that was something like BrainBook was naturally going to come out of you anyways?
Yeah, I mean, yeah. I think it's quite, personally, it's quite frustrating because I work with some supremely talented individuals like Artibiotics, Killian Kearns, and Merlin Strangeway, Ladvik. You know, these artists, you know, they're freelance science communication specialists. They're all very unique, extremely talented.
Amazing.
And I always just say to myself, God, I wish I could do your job. I really wish I could do what you're doing. Like that's what I would do 100%. Like I love it. I absolutely love it. So yeah, I think you're right. Yeah. It may be that when we as a team of trustees or as a committee, you know, commission these guys and girls to create art for us for videos or social media or whatever, personally, I think I'm trying to live through them. I don't know. But
are you secretly envious?
I am. Yeah, definitely, 100% envious. But it's the videography as well.
Says the guy who's doing brain surgery. Yeah, says the guy.
it's all relative, though, isn't it, man? I mean, the other thing is videography was quite cool. Like, I got into photography when I was younger, but never really pursued it. And then had to do a lot of filming for BrainBook, you know, not knowing what I was doing. And then we got a nice camera and actually I found a real enjoyment for filming and editing. A lot of the newer stuff on BrainBook is outsourced now because I don't have the time to do a lot of editing. But I do love it. And that's why shameless plug here. That's why I've started my second channel, like my own personal channel.
We're going to definitely
because I want to do a bit more of the filming, do a bit more of the vlogging, that kind of stuff, and get back into the editing myself and try and up my skills there. Yeah. I don't know to what end, but we'll see.
I think what's so nice and refreshing to see, and I think it'll probably one of the last things we'll talk about. It's nice. A lot of senior clinicians, surgeons are going on YouTube, going on social media, and giving us an insight. Because, like you said, we never get a taste of what neurosurgery is like. Even like anesthetics, ITU, it's nice to see it on platforms like YouTube, what your life does entail. And obviously, this is probably something we should talk about, is this misconception about neurosurgeons being, you know, the surgery is not competitive, hyper competitive, right? And this godlike presence, not interacting with anyone. Tell us a bit about that. Is that something you've experienced, or do you think it's something that's been phased out with this new generation of individuals coming through?
I mean, personally, I'm a complete dick at work. No, I'm not really. I'm joking. I don't know. I hope people think I'm a nice person. We do lose our tempers. Every doctor, surgeon loses their temper. I think neurosurgeons get a bad rep, and I think a lot of it is fear of the unknown, right? We're all very highly strung because, you know, neurosurgery is like the ultimate risk management job. You know, sometimes you can be a really damn good surgeon. I'm not saying I am, but I've worked with a lot of consultants who are exceptional. And you would say, if I had a problem or if my mum had a problem, God forbid, I would want them to operate on my mum, right? That's the gold standard of care that you hear, right?
Yeah.
And the pre-operative care will be excellent. The surgery will be finesse. It will be beautiful. And then post-op, the patient wakes up with a severe deficit. And you don't know why it's happened, and you spend hours and days trying to figure out what went wrong, and you feel crushed as a human being, and you feel sad for your patient because they have to live with this for the rest of their life, right? And I think as individuals, that can make you an extremely aloof or highly strung or just generally unpleasant person, right? And that can happen to any doctor. I don't know why neurosurgeons have such a rep for that. I don't know why, because I'll be absolutely honest with you, 90% of the neurosurgeons that I've met in my career to date have just been the most lovely, charming, patient-oriented, fantastic individuals I've ever met, right? They genuinely care so much about their patients. I think sometimes the spillover with other doctors and where this misconception may occur is that as registrars, when we're on call, the volumes of referrals can be extremely high. Sometimes the referrals can not be so great. And when you're very, very busy and you're under a lot of pressure from within your hospital and covering a catchment that covers a lot of London, which is a large number of patients, you can be really, really stressed out. And unfortunately, that can sometimes spill over onto our colleagues. And that's probably where it comes from. And it's all good and well saying, be kind to each other and everything. But, people not only have stress at work and they don't have a lot of, they've got a lot of pressure from their bosses, from patients, from referrals, from on calls, but we're humans too, right? I've got two children at home, 2 years old, 5 years old. I've got a wife at home doing GP clinics on a day-to-day basis, doing vaccination clinics on the Saturday. We rarely see each other. I hardly see my kids. And when I do, sometimes they're ill, sometimes they're this, sometimes they're that. It's just so much of this going on in your head,
Exactly.
And it spills out, unfortunately. So,
yeah. I remember one neurosurgical registrar telling me that referral phone just doesn't stop ringing. As soon as you put it down, another ring comes through, and it can sort of, as you said, spill over when you've also got another patient being transferred because you've got a bleed or something coming in.
It's because it's guys like me. When I was on IT working as like SHO, I used to call the neuroreg. ICP's going through the roof. ICP's going through the roof. I don't know what I'm doing. So you probably get a lot of stupid calls from juniors like me.
From panicking SHOs.
He used to hate
Yeah.
It was like quite a big show hospital, and there's lots of things. You have to call the temperature, kind of do the uplift and cool them down, and I was like, man, just manage it. You've been here for how many months and you're still cool. Because you do.
No, for us, it's the worst thing that's happening, and the neurosurgeon, obviously, they deal with it with just finesse, and it's not stressful for them.
I think what it is, it's because it's the brain, and we know how important it is, and it's fear of the unknown, and the last thing you want to do is mess up for someone that leads to a deficit, right?
Yeah.
And everyone's on edge. No one wants to be known as that guy that messed up, or he went too high and he didn't inform anyone, right? So I think that does kind of overlay. But I'm glad you kind of mentioned it, and in a holistic way, where there's a lot of factors that you guys are dealing with, and it's just only natural and human to kind of be a bit, not abrupt or kind of spills over.
Yeah, no, I'm not saying it's excusable. But what I'm trying to say, I suppose, is that especially if you follow Med Twitter, goddamn #Med Twitter, my god, wow. Sometimes I just don't open Twitter. I'm not very active on Twitter because I try and stay away from all the doom scrolling and all the drama.
Yeah.
Oh my god, the drama! I thought work was dramatic, but damn, Med Twitter. It's just I don't know. You can't. No. You've got a certain amount of bandwidth, right? And
of course,
sometimes people are like, oh, the neurosurgery reg didn't really talk to me very much, or was very abrupt, or they gave me a very curt reply, or something like that. And it's like, it isn't excusable to be rude, okay? Like, I'm not condoning that. We'll never condone that. But you need to help each other, not just being kind, but also questioning why you're picking up the phone to somebody, right? When when I was a house officer, I wouldn't call a renal reg without knowing a creatinine and a urine output, or a GFR at the very least. And even though I wanted to do neurosurgery, I shit myself when I called the neurosurgical reg. I would have scans up, I'd have the paper notes out, I'd know what colour the patient's cat was. Yeah, 100%.
GCS,
with orthopedics, I will have at least looked at the X-ray and been like, it's broken. It's like broken in the arm. Help.
Yeah.
But but now I think everybody's under so much pressure that you get referrals that are just referrals for the sake of it, and there's nothing more stressful than having to deal with it when you're actually trying to deal with something that is important and urgent.
definitely.
Yeah, I think know what you're talking about before you pick up the phone. It's always a good tip for new doctors.
That's for any specialty. I'm conscious of time, and I know we've kind of kept you away. Before we conclude, any advice you want to give to any future trainees, or just on being a good doctor, a good surgeon? It's always nice to kind of hear it from our seniors, because you do have that extra added experience that we don't. So please do share something.
Oh, that's a tough one, man.
Or put you on the spot. Come on, man. You're a brain surgeon. You should perform.
Yeah, but this is something people actually care about, right? It's like words of wisdom from someone who's been through it. You know, I'm only halfway through it.
No, this is important.
I think it's at work. Just try and be cool. Try and be human. I think you've got to, in the jobs that we do, you have to live and breathe it to an extent. It's your career. And you're looking after patients and they depend on you. But at the same time, a lot of times you meet people at work and you just think you just need to relax. Seriously, you need to calm down. And everything will be so much better when you calm down. Your interactions will be better. The communications with team members, patients on the ward, just slowing down and just taking a little bit more time and just chilling out. Seriously. Yeah. Like some days I'll think to myself, I'm rushing around, I'm being really not short with people, but very businesslike. And actually it's not doing me any favors because I'm stressing myself out. It's not doing them any favors because they just think at the end of the day, what's wrong with him? Is he okay? He's not usually like that. And you just got to think, A, chill out. B, if something is on your mind, find someone safe at work to talk to. Like if you've got personal problems going on, that can be your boss, that can be a colleague, you know, that's on the same peer level as you. Just find someone that you can talk to and offload all of that off onto before it spills over into your work.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I've found that the stuff that limits me as a doctor the most has been trying to take everything in and not having an outlet. That's when things go wrong.
Yeah, no,
absolutely.
Definitely. That's
amazing.
Sound advice, and we've really enjoyed talking to you, finding a bit more about specialty and just hearing your own story. I do hope it encourages a lot of people that do want to apply for neurosurgery to apply, because I know there's a bit of fear and anxiety of, is it for me? Do I not have the personality type to fit in? Because there is that type of advice given to people.
There's no personality type. Just do it if you want to do it.
Yeah, and I think I'm gonna.
Amazing.
We agree with that. But thank you, Alex, for taking the time out to do this.
Pleasure, guys.
Massive thank you
pleasure.
to our listeners.